Hello, everybody. My name is Reverend Diane Doughtery, and I am the host for a program called Take a Stand. You're listening to the WCEG network on WCEG Talk Radio. You can find us on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter. We are the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group. You can even call in on or Skype by going to 1-678-619-1402. We'd love to hear from you. Join in the comments, ask any questions. We would love to answer you. We're a 501c3 nonprofit radio station, so please consider making a tax-deductible donation to help support our broadcasts. You can go on our website or you can call the office at 404-490-8646. Thank you in advance. We would like to make a disclaimer at this time, and that is the topics and opinions of those that are hosts, that would be me, and my guests are not the opinions of the WCEG management. So getting right at it. Tonight we're going to talk on Take a Stand about people who are in the resistance. One of the things that is very important for people to understand is that whenever there is an action, I think Newton said this, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So in our society today, there are many people who are taking a stand on issues related to democracy, the Constitution, and also our way of life. Oh, I beg your pardon. I thought you said start over. Oh, okay. So anyway, one of the big issues that we are dealing with, I have put in under a huge umbrella called the return of the patriarchs. All of this resistance, I believe, has to do with issues related to the loss of power that men are feeling within our society, most particularly white men. And also white women, women of privilege, of which I am one. I really believe there is a very exciting movement in all of this chaos, an opportunity in which we can reconstruct the boundaries of our world that will work for everyone. I look to the human body as a metaphor. When you get sick, there are many antibodies in your healthy body that go after whatever your illness is, and they fight for you. 2 or 3 days later, you wake up and you feel much better and you're able to carry on with life. What I believe is happening in our society is that there are many antibodies that are trying to resist a movement that are taking our rights from us. What we are excited about is what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to list a few of those experiences to help you get a framework of what is happening in the America and globally, as well as how this resistance is taking place. I don't know if many of you heard that there's a Representative Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, and he is a multimillionaire, a Republican, who has stated just this week that both health care and food are privileges in America. They're not rights. So in other words, the Republican Congress would like to take food stamps away from Americans. Georgia will suffer significantly. 54,000 Americans, Georgians will not have access to food stamps if this goes through. It hasn't gone through. They're also working to take our health care away from us because, again, they believe it's a right, not a privilege, and it should be earned. Many of us buy Nestle's product, and I just bought a great big box of Nestle's hot chocolate. I bought it before I saw it was made from Nestle's. And I also found out that Nestle's owns Fancy Feast cat food, which is what I feed my cat, only to find out that Nestle's CEO is convinced that water is not a right and it is a privilege. So, in other words, because Nestle's has taken over the Great Lakes, for $200 a year, they can extract as much water as they want from Lake Huron. And that's where all the bottled water comes from. So interestingly, when Flint had their water crisis, Nestle already had the bottled water ready, but the government had to buy it from Nestle's. So you can see where, in a sense, the ownership of these and privatization of institutions that are taking our resources is not going to be for our benefit or for the benefit of people. It's going to be for the benefit of larger corporations. I was listening just this last week to Reverend Barber. Many of you know that he is a wonderful preacher from North Carolina, and he has the Poor People's Campaign, which has been in existence for a while now. I love to listen to him because he talks gospel, Christian commitment with policies that the government is making. One of the things that struck me was that 143 million people are poor. That means that in America we have that many people, which is 43% of the population, living in poverty. That's below the poverty line or at the poverty line. They do not make substantial wages and they can't save anything. They are really part of the group that undergirds the American economy. When I was reflecting on the beliefs of Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, as well as the CEO from Nestle's, and I understood that they really believe that human rights have no role in their companies or their positions, I came to realize that they are making people poor, that the 143 million is directly, there's a cause that these 143 million are directly made poor by the policies and the lack of advocacy by people within the within America itself. What we are doing in America is witnessing a great rising of numbers of people that are resisting this. And only through this resistance will our American people rise to a society that works for everyone. And so we see this resistance not just in healthcare, not just when the Republicans say they're taking away food stamps, not just when Nestle says water is a right, and water is not a right, it's a privilege. And they're beginning to take those resources away from us. People are rising up because that is not our value, nor is it our belief in American society. For those that listen to the news, India was of particular interest this last week because I don't know if you've ever driven 365 miles, but I have. It's from here, 365 miles would probably take you from Atlanta to, say, Lexington, Kentucky. It is quite a long drive, or wait, maybe not that much. Let's see, 66, yeah, Lexington. It would probably take you right before Lexington, Kentucky. In India, there was a woman who was grabbed by a mob. She was a young 23-year-old woman. She was grabbed by a mob and was brutally murdered and hidden. So the police had put the perpetrator in custody, but they let him out early. So of course he and his gang went after this woman, and not only did they murder her, but they burned her body. And again, that was after they gang raped her. This is so egregious because in India, women have very little access to protection. It is, again, a patriarchal society in which men have more privileges than women, and women are beginning to rise up. Non-violently, I might say. So this organized group of women stood elbow to elbow for 365 miles, resisting the action of the police in that area. They did find these men. These men are going to be tried, but justice is often interrupted because men are men, because they believe men will be men. And women, again, like Ron Johnson, who believes that health care is a privilege, women have the privilege of being in their society, but they don't have a right to any laws or rules of protection. But they're changing that. Another topic I would like to talk about are the number of people in Atlanta that are working for immigrant rights. I know that the administration right now has limited to a larger extent the rights of immigrants because it is his belief that in America they do not have rights afforded them by the Constitution and by our laws. He's changing that. So I went to a organization meeting that's been, it was the 30th anniversary of the School of the Americas Watch. That happens in Columbus, Georgia, and it was begun by a group of people and Father Roy Bourgeois. We heard a number of wonderful people on a panel that talked about the rights of immigrants in El Salvador, in America, in Iraq, in Iran, even in our own city, the Georgia Latino Alliance for Human Rights that's run by Adelina Nichols. They were so articulate, and they are rising up right in front of us. So as these attacks happen by certain and various leaders within a government, people get out of their comfortability and take a stand. And that's those are just some of the topics that we have talked about in the past on Take a Stand, and we will continue to talk about them. I want to talk about the Hindus in India. The Hindu religion, the men of the Hindu religion have taken over the government, and they have put in very strict laws for men and women. And just yesterday, there was a woman who was caned. She was found to have premarital sex with another man. And to make a spectacle of this, they had a public caning. They put her under a tent, and a number of men of the Hindu religion took sticks and they beat her almost to death in front of the public. And all I could think of was the number of people that would come to see something like this and cheer them on. It reminds me of rallies that Trump is having where people are cheering when he talks about immigrants and families being taken apart from families, and just the basic cruelty that is being exposed in our society, not just on our shores, but globally. So when I pray and when I look at all of this, I keep saying, what is the larger umbrella? What is all of this about? What are we talking? What are we talking about in terms of having a number of people cruelly treated within all societies all over the United States and the world? And how does that translate globally, where you see in France, they shut down the entire government. Millions of people in Hong Kong, 2 million protested over the weekend because they are interested in democracy. And Bolivia, the terror of the people that are there. And just today in our world is being destabilized. So under that big picture, I have decided that the conflict is caused because patriarchy, which is the rule of men over all of us, is being challenged. There are more and more women that are standing up. There are more and more women that are being educated, that are becoming voices in government. And this is a challenge to the patriarchal institutions in which men assume that they hold full power. In my own religion, which is Roman Catholic, I've decided to become a priest. And as soon as I did that, I was excommunicated. So the price for me to do this is not caning, but it is exclusion from the parishes and from the people that both raised me, nurtured me, and also those that I love and that I treasured. That doesn't mean that people don't love me anymore. They don't admire me. I look at all of the children that I taught, and so many of them are on Facebook with me. But the reality is that even the Catholic Church is being exposed as for patriarchal immorality. And many, many people are rising up against it. 33 million have left the church, but there are those of us that said, why should we leave? In the midst of their criminal activity, and of course everybody is very aware of the pedophilia crisis, the amount of money that has been spent on going to government offices or government courts and trying to obstruct the laws that would expand the statute of limitations. All of these obstructions are part of a patriarchal playbook in which they must maintain power at the expense of the people that we are supposed to serve. What it means for women who work in the church is, while we have a lot of power, and this is why I joined the church, because while I was in religious ministry as a nun for 23 years and a lay minister for 14, I was given a lot of power. I was given a lot of leeway in terms of building communities. I was considered an asset to the church itself, and a bright light that showed the love of Christ. What I didn't understand was what patriarchal institutions do with their power. And when we started to speak out for justice, for fairness, for inclusion, there was a movement to remove us. And I saw with my own eyes the wiping away of all of the educated lay people and nuns all throughout the South. It was just an amazing thing that there was no bloodshed, there was no resistance, because we didn't even know what was happening. And within the church, of course, the bishop holds all power, and all he has to do is manipulate the people that are under him, the people who have to be obedient to him. And in doing that, the entire constellation of the church that I grew up with was changed. And it moved back to a pre-Vatican model where lay people pay, pray, and obey. And actually, the churches became very large. One of the conscious problems I had at that time was the removal of all Catholic churches and schools from the inner city. Many of you remember Our Lady of Lourdes. In 2007, the woman was canonized who gave money to begin the school, Catherine Drexel. She became a saint. And shortly after that, the bishop closed the school because he said none of them are Catholic, and why should we be paying and supporting people who aren't Catholic? I was in the state of shock. All of the schools in the inner city were closed down, and a new school was built out in the by the perimeter. But the people from those areas, that community, could no longer attend the school. And while they tried to start charters there, none of that worked out. So the people and the community lost a huge part of their heart. It was like gutting the community itself. And it hurt me so, because there was no way that, as the director of religious education at that time, I was able to have any voice in that decision. It was simply the new men that came in that made the decision to strengthen, quote unquote, the Catholic Church. So what did they do? They moved all of the money, all of the institutional schools out to the suburbs. I don't know how many people know this, but for 20 years they taxed every church 15% of their income for the first 250,000 they brought in, and then in increments after that. I think our church paid like $34,000 a month to the diocese for 20 years, and that is in support of the schools. Now the schools in those areas are thriving, and the 20 years is going to be up. And so one of the problems I have now are the movement in many areas, especially in Republican states, to bring in vouchers, so that the vouchers and these tax credits will be given to people who really don't need it, in my mind, because they are very wealthy. And this takes funds away, public funds away from the 104 schools that are targeted in the areas of Atlanta that really need a quality education. So I belong now, or I have interviewed people who belong to the Georgia Coalition for Public Education. And we are looking into a positive movement to help schools that find themselves in this in this situation. We're looking into the movement of community schools, and this is becoming a nationwide movement in which the school remains in the district itself, and the community receives outside help or resources to help both the children as well as the community. They have help with housing, transportation, and parents are given options for childcare at the school as well as education for their children. The entire idea is to build the community within the district, not close the school down and make the district, put a hole in that district and have children that were in that school go to other ventures. Moving isn't an option. So these are just some of the issues that I have been dealing with. And again, I go back to the original idea that when we have a healthy body, if the body gets sick, there are antibodies, healthy antibodies, that rise up in that area, and they help the body return to health. So I see the people that have been on Take a Stand. I interview those that have been on it. And what they are doing is they are trying to make a difference and find a world that works for everyone. Another issue that I wanted to bring up with the Catholic, with the Catholic tradition, is that our group, the Roman Catholic Women Priests, I belong to the Association of Roman Catholic Women Priests, really support the LGBTQ community. We have, I don't know if you've read about the judge that had been a member of her parish for 40 years, and the pastor decided that when she came to communion 2 Sundays, or a month ago, that he would not serve her communion. So, because he found out that she was married to her partner. Now, she had been going to communion in that church for 40 years and was just devastated. Imagine going to communion and having the priest put his hand over the bread and say, no, you're not allowed to receive. But actually, I think he sent a letter to her before she went to church. So it was really difficult for me to understand that our Catholic Church or our Catholic hierarchy would collaborate with such an act that is not one of love. And it supports or feeds into the hatred that is brewing in so many different areas of our world. So I would like now to introduce to you my friend, Valencia, who has a wonderful, who is the host of her own show, which is Issues and Answers. And with this, I will close off myself and be a good listener to you. Hello, Valencia. I'm so glad to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much. It's always good to see you, Reverend Doughtery. And I was just sitting here listening to all of your reports and really appreciate you educating the community on all the different issues worldwide. Because a lot of times we kind of focus on what's going on locally and not really paying attention to what's going on worldwide that ends up affecting us locally.
And do you agree that a lot of these are the same issue?
Yes.
That men are trying to maintain power, but women are rising.
Yes, definitely.
And Valencia, please tell everyone about yourself. She is a mover and a shaker.
Thank you. I'm State Representative Valencia Stovall, House District 74 in Clayton County, but I am a state elected official, so issues we have to tackle at the state capitol are statewide issues. And I'm excited to be here with WCEG radio again, and of course with sitting next to the very informative Reverend Doughtery. And I always laugh, we were on a panel together a couple of years ago.
Yes.
And, it's always good when you can have a good, healthy conversation. And because you're talking about issues, you don't have to take it personally. And that's one thing I respect about Reverend Doughtery, because we have issues of disagreement on education output. But at the end of the day, we're all concerned about the best education for our children here in Georgia.
Amen.
We just probably disagree on how we get there. But we know that what we want best, both of us want best, is for our education system to be the best so we can have productive citizens to be able to contribute back to our society.
Amen.
And currently, we just wrapped up our House Study Committee on maternal mortality.
Ooh.
And I was one of, I think it was about 5 of us on the committee. And this committee was created during legislative session, early part of session, to be able to look at issues that are going on that affecting why the state of Georgia is having so many women dying because of childbirth-related issues. And so by serving on this committee, we had a total of 5 meetings throughout, from starting in September, and we just had our last meeting last week. And we heard from different experts from the medical field about what they saw as some of the issues as far as that are contributing to maternal mortality, and some suggestions that we can look at as legislators to be able to introduce legislation, look at our budget or how money is allocated, and what would be best for that. And I would like to share some of the results from the committee that I was able to sit in on. Actually was there for all of the meetings, and it was very very interesting. I'm not in the healthcare field, but being a woman, and I do have 2 adult children, so it was something that resonated to me when it comes to maternal mortality, and didn't realize it was such a big issue here in Georgia. And with African American women actually having the highest risk to die from pregnancy-related issues, and they're actually 3 to 4 times likely to die than our white counterparts or any other race
right.
here. And this is nationally; it's not just here in Georgia. And some of the things that we looked at was that 60% of those cases of women, period, dying, well, it doesn't matter what race, 60% of them can be prevented, and they're preventable causes. Majority of them are related to health, to the heart, cardio related. Another thing that we talked about or heard about was some of the suggestions was being able to allow for those women that are receiving Medicaid to have extended care up to 1 year of postpartum, whether it's post-miscarriage or postpartum. So after a woman has either miscarried a child or has actually given birth to a child, it's usually, I think, about up to maybe a month after that, that the medical services are covered. Well, they've seen in the research that there's a lot of things that are going on. Of course, you know about postpartum depression, but a lot of other things that can be going on with the women, with their bodies, and they would not know about it. They just think it might be just part of them have had a baby. And so being able to expand that particular coverage would give the mothers more time to be able to go in and see the doctor, the doctors being able to see what the problems are, and being able to actually be able to heal, make sure that they're healed properly, because that is a very traumatic thing that when a woman has a baby, because everything changes when you're pregnant. The other suggestion, that some things that came out of research, was midwifery, doulas, and nurses being able to assist with home visits. And some of the research, they found that when home visits were given to women, even especially during a prenatal time, then there were less amount of risk as far as the women actually not being able to carry their baby full term, because a lot of times pregnant mothers, especially new ones, have so many questions and don't know what to do. And so by having the midwife and the doulas and those nurses being able to do the home visit, have cut down on a lot of questions they would have had to wait to their next doctor's appointment to even ask their doctor about. So that was one. So we heard from several organizations, several hospitals that had the different type of programs as well. Also, we do have in the state of Georgia a maternal mortality review committee that actually look at cases where deaths have occurred after women have given birth. The only issue with that was the amount of time that it takes for them to do the review, collect the data, and then being able to publish it out. It's usually about 1 to 2 years later. So when you start looking at how can we be more proactive, that was one of the things that I heard from the report that we definitely should kind of look at and seeing how to be able to do that a little bit better. Another issue that came up, this is directly for African American women, was racial bias in healthcare deliveries.
Amen.
And so a lot of times the physicians or nurses, when an African American woman goes in for, in this case, since we're talking about maternal, during their pregnancy, and they may have complications and complain about them, they're not taking it serious as white counterparts or other races. It's almost as if the Black African American women are exaggerating situations. And there were some reports, or even in the report that was given, where there were cases where the women had complained, African American women had complained, the doctors did not take them serious, and it ended up resulting in a very bad situation for some of the women. And so
that tennis player.
Yes,
What
yeah,
was
she
her
was
name?
one.
Vanessa? No.
Oh, I see. She's the two sisters. One of the sisters. I can't. See her face. I can't think of her name. Serena. Yeah.
Williams.
Yeah, Serena Williams, the tennis player. And
she almost died.
yes, and it's very serious.
They didn't listen to her.
No, they didn't. And so one of the reports that came out, we actually was a hospital or clinic that actually does training, and one part of their training they do include in about racial bias. And one of the questions we asked was how prevalent was that across the whole medical spectrum? You know, was it just this particular hospital that did that? And so nobody really had an answer for that. So those are things that we have to look at when we start talking about how do we prevent these issues that are going on, especially if a woman, African American woman, any woman, is making complaints about issues that are going on that they notice in their bodies that are changing. Then it's very imperative for our medical staff and officials to make sure that they're paying close attention to that, especially that we're in a state where it is a high number of maternal mortalities. Another issue came up with African American women, which I did not know, was there's a certain genetic disorder that is prevalent in African American women, which causes an increase in the risk of preeclampsia and eclampsia because it's something that's heart related. And it's also shown that it is genetic, where your sister can also have the same problem, and your daughter, and the woman's daughter. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, it was very eye-opening for me for this particular committee. And so I definitely encourage everyone to be on the lookout. The House, we have to give a report to the Speaker. Anytime there's a House study committee created during legislative session, we usually have until the first part of December to conduct all of our meetings. And then from there, we formulate a report of recommendations on what we recommend that on this particular instance, what the House of Representatives will be able to do or should do as far as introducing legislation, or whether it's a combination of putting something additional in the budget. And so definitely look out for that. And you can always visit our website, the House website, house.ga.gov, G-O-V, and look for study committees. And you can click on it, and it actually will show you all of the information from all the presentations that were given for the last 5 meetings. So anytime you hear that there's a House study committee created, or even on the Senate side, that information is open to the public. You're always welcome to be able to go on those websites and click on the committees. You can go all the way back to almost 3 and 4 years ago for committees that we have that were created by the legislative body. The next thing I want to talk about was the new voting machine. So, of course, there's been a lot of talk, being that it's coming up for election season next year, 2020, a huge election season. And definitely want to make sure I encourage everyone, if you're not registered to vote, shame on you, because you have to be registered to vote in order to be able to make a difference. That's right. Even if you say your vote doesn't count, locally, there have been several instances, even most recently, where a person won by 1 vote or won by 2 votes. And just think, when you're in that as a candidate, you're sitting there thinking, who didn't go vote? Who sat at home? And I could have won, or they could have made a difference, in that election. So if nothing else, we can't, I'm not telling who to vote for. You should research the candidates to make sure that they align to what it is that you're interested in, but making sure that you are registered to vote. And it's so easy to be registered to vote. Doesn't take anything complicated. Even if you're going to renewing your driver's license, they're going to ask you, are you registered to vote? Even if you are, just say yes and just do it out and make sure that you're in the system, because that's very important. With the new voting machines, that legislation came up during legislative session, and there were there were several bills that were introduced, several of them by Representative Kimberly Alexander, a Democrat, relating to some deficiencies that we had in our past voting legislation, which did prevent and hinder a lot of people from being able to vote. It caused a lot of roadblocks. So what happened with the final legislation, it was a combination of those bills that were introduced by her and some other people were actually combined into one total bill and also the voting machine was also included in that legislation. In my district in Clayton County, we were the first county to co-host the demonstration of the new voting machine. And I specifically had it located at our senior center, Frank Bailey Senior Center. One is because you have senior citizens that are used to voting a certain way, that we want to make sure that they felt comfortable with the new machine that's going to be rolled out. And also because we have several people that are disabled, that we want to make sure that they are feeling comfortable with the new voting machine. I was able to be there throughout the whole demonstration, got a chance to even go through the demonstration myself. And I really like the new voting machine process, even though there are still some things that they're working out, and I know we'll be using them in March for the presidential primary, and also with our Democratic and Republican primaries as well.
Is there a paper ballot?
Yes. So it does print out a paper ballot at the end and actually before you even hit the print button, it's a big, large screen that you can even adjust the size of the text, and you're able to review your votes at that time. And then once you hit the print, it's a actual printer that actually prints out your ballot. You're able to look at that as well, and then you actually place it in a scanner yourself, so no one else touches your ballot the whole time. And if you happen to leave out of the voting area, the voting place location, with your ballot in your hand, and you forgot and you come back in, you have to do it all back over, because it would have been tainted. Yeah, going out. So they're very, very careful. We got a chance to, of course, Secretary Ratsberger was there, and other staff from Secretary of State's office to be able to answer any questions and all of that. So I know there are other demonstrations that are going on across the state, And if you're interested, definitely reach out to the Secretary of State's office to make sure it comes to your county, in your community, so that you can have an idea about the machine and be able to ask any of those pertinent questions about what you've been hearing about the hacking and all the other stuff that was a huge concern during our legislative session.
What did they say about hacking?
Well, with anything, anytime something is online, there's the possibility of being hacked. And because those systems are not going to be online, they actually, once your vote is placed, there's a card that's already inserted into the machines that the polling manager is the only person that can be able to remove that card. So because it's not going to be directly online.
Oh, very interesting.
Now that's what my understanding is. So the next topic I want to talk about is the location of Atlanta Technical College. Now has a south location in Clayton County on Highway 85. So this is great for our for south of I-20 because it allows for more opportunities for those individuals who need additional training for higher wage paying jobs. And right now with the state, we have the High Demand Career Initiative, which are 17 industries that are saying that they don't have enough skilled workforce in order to be able to provide the products and services that they need. And so they're working through the technical college system of Georgia. So all 22 institutions across the state have this particular program where the HOPE grant is available. And in most cases, you will be able to actually go to college, go to technical college at no cost.
Wonderful.
And so I definitely encourage you all to go to the website TCSG, that's Technical College System of Georgia.edu, and contact your local technical college to see those programs and find out about those programs. We talk about how do we increase the median income in many of our communities. It's only going to come because you have a trained workforce. And with this program, with the technical college system is an ideal program. And sometimes the training sessions may be 6 weeks up to maybe a year. It just depends on which industry that you're going to choose. But the opportunities are out there where you just have to be able to take that step to know that you want to be able to do something better. And yes, it's going to take sacrifices. Anything that's great that's going to happen, sacrifices are what's going to be required. Also,
can you tell? Do you know some of the offerings they have there?
Yes. So in computer science, also in HVAC, welding, plumbing.
Nice.
Electricity. Yeah, electricians. If you think about the kind of the vocational courses, those are the ones that are really in high demand. And I think my opinion is that probably in the late 80s, there was a different shift in trying to encourage more of our high school students at that time to go to four-year colleges and kind of eliminate the offering of technical college, or what we call vocational tech courses then. And now we're feeling the brunt of it because a lot of the people that are now in those fields are retiring out.
You got it.
And when they're retiring out, and if they haven't trained a new workforce on what to do, that's kind of where we are now. And especially when you hear that plumbers can make more than a four-year college graduate.
$96,000
right.
a year.
And even welders making a lot more money. So in my opinion, I just feel that every high school student should graduate with some type of technical certification. Whether they're going to go to a four-year college or not, at least once they leave high school, they can be able to take care of their families.
Absolutely.
And so I definitely be one of the things I'll be pushing for, since I do sit on the education committee. I also sit on economic development and tourism. Sit on education appropriation as well. So in the education appropriations, our committee determines what those education funds are going to be, how they're going to be appropriated as well. I sit on interstate cooperation and small business development. So next, also I was appointed to the Innovation Foundation Fund, which is funds that are set aside for public schools, nonprofits, and higher institutions. And these funds, originally the foundation started with the Race to the Top grant money that came in years ago. And so once that federal money was depleted, then the state picked up a lot of the funding of different programs. And for those particular programs, you have to have an innovative idea. And the innovation just does not mean technology. It has to be something we think about something that's new, that has not been tried before, that's going to be a little risky, but that you believe that can make a difference in how education is delivered to our young people in the state. And so now that particular foundation is now being accredited or approved as a 501c3. So for those of you all who still are trying to figure out how to get that tax write-off at the end of the year, you could definitely be able to give to the Innovation Foundation Fund for money to be able to be given out to our schools.
And
public
how do
schools.
you get money from it?
Well, it's a dollar for dollar donation, and what happens is the schools they will send out information to the community on when the opening of the grants will be, and then the schools or the nonprofits or the higher ed institutions will actually apply for those particular funds.
And then how many get access to it?
Over the years, I think it's been I think it's probably maybe about 4 years, and I just got appointed, so I don't know a whole lot of information. Yeah. But I think it's been about 230 grants that have been given. And so I know with our recent new appointments, a couple of us that are new on this foundation, even looking at ways to be able to make sure we're getting the information out more into the community so that they can know about these particular funds that are available. And the biggest thing is showing and making sure that they're collaborating and not just kind of one school doing something. You know, how do you collaborate with, if you have a school, a nonprofit, being able to collaborate together and then being able to really maximize those funds. And then hopefully being able to take the success of that program and being able to duplicate it in other places across the state. That's the most important part about this particular grant fund.
Good to know.
And I also serve as a commissioner on the Georgia Council for the Arts, and we recently gave out grants for across the state to the different arts programs across the state, and we actually added on a new type of grant, which was a facilities grant. So a lot of times you have art programs that have issues with buildings or trying to find buildings so that they can be able to really service their community. So this year we were able to fund quite a few organizations across the state with that. And so if you want more information on that, you can Google Georgia Council for the Arts. And they have different times to be able to apply for those particular grants too. And just giving you a tidbit, collaboration is very important when you're looking at applying for grants. They don't want it just to be one particular organization, but how you've been able to collaborate and partner with other organizations to be able to achieve your goals and also their goals to best benefit our community overall. And because arts has been taken out of a lot of our schools and programs, it has really, our children really have suffered because arts brings out that creative side of our students. And sometimes we wonder, well, why they can't be creative? Why we can't we tell them to do something that just, we got to direct them 1 step, 2 step, 3 step. That's because that creative part of their brain has not been developed. And so whatever we can do to improve more arts, you know, in our school system, that's what's best.
Recess.
Yes, and recess is another. I know that particular bill got.
Did it get in?
No, it did not. It had gotten vetoed, which I was in full support of the recess bill. I think that we have to give opportunities for our children to have that time away from just always.
It's a terrible
structured.
thing when you have to have a bill, the state.
Yes,
Mandate recess.
And the thing was that even though some school districts griped about it, we're already doing it. Well, that's good. So this bill would not have affected you.
That's right.
But you have some school districts that for whatever reason thinks that curriculum has to always come first and it's by itself. But you have to allow for those children to have that outlet, so that they're not so don't have enough attention
And
in
if
it
you
and
don't
everything.
give them recess, they take it.
Yes, they're gonna take it in the classroom. So, and then that gives the teachers a break as well. Yeah, they're gonna
Well,
take
no,
it.
because then you got to be out there with them.
Well, but you don't have to worry about sit down, do your instructions
that's
here,
true.
do this, do that. You can let them time and don't use it as a punishment either. Allow the students to be able to participate in recess. So I don't know if the legislator would be reintroducing it. He worked very hard on it for a couple of years for trying to get it to where everybody can just about agree on the bill. So we'll see. There's always surprises up on the Gold Dome at the Georgia State Capitol. The next thing is that recently I graduated from the Georgia Academy for Economic Development for Region 3, and this is a program that is managed up under our Department of Community Affairs. And what it does, it provides leadership and opportunity for us to gain unique understanding of the complexities of economic development and community development on our local, regional, and state levels. So it's made up of not just elected officials. We have people that are in that are actually directors in economic development departments that were a part as well. And it was very interesting because there were about, I think, 13 counties that were a part of this particular class that I was in. And so we got a chance to visit each one of the, just not all the counties, but we did visit Cobb. We went to Cherokee, Henry, Fulton, actually South Fulton, and I forgot what other county we might have visited. But
Metro Atlanta.
Yeah, it's Metro Atlanta. And so we got a chance to hear from those different economic development departments. We got to hear from a lot of our state departments on how the whole process of economic development happens. When a company is looking at coming and locating in a certain area, what are those things that the State Department of Economic Development does? What is that the local city or county, what are some of the things they have to prepare themselves for? So it's very, very eye-opening experience because you got a chance to see the behind the scenes of what happens when you hear the announcement that the governor may make about a new company located in this county, and then you kind of got a chance to see what was all the back work that had to take place. What are those negotiations that the city, the county, the school system all had to make, especially with them owning different properties. What's going to be best. And then at the end of the day, you got to look at what's going to be best for that community, for that particular county. That means that one city might not get all what they intentionally wanted. The county might not get all. The school system may not get all. But how do we all come together to make sure that particular county wins that bid? And not only just the county, but the state of Georgia as a whole benefits.
Did they talk at all about affordable housing?
That did come up. Actually, we had a session on what were some of the things that were challenges in our particular county. And it was amazing. Of course, transportation came up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but the part I was probably most shocked about is that just about all the counties said they had an issue of the residents having to drive out the county to go to work. And you would think of it, I guess I was
My
just
whole
thinking,
life.
Really?
Except when I was in the convent and I lived right next door.
Okay, then you have to drive, just walk.
But it's true. You can't afford to stay there.
And it was just amazing because, like I said, we were up in Cherokee County in Canton. And one of the representatives was like, yeah, most of our people driving. I was like, really? And then Gwinnett, and so it was just amazing how there was a common denominator among all the counties, no matter what the economic status were, everybody had that particular issue. And so we were all talking about how do we look at how businesses are positioned or placed in different counties and kind of see how you rework it so that you can stay and work in the county where you live.
That's the community school concept. Build the school where the community is.
Right. It
would be ideal.
Yeah, definitely will be. Where you can be able to garner all of those resources.
I don't know about you, but we walked 2 blocks to school.
Yeah, I think I went maybe about 2.
We never got out of that.
Maybe about 3 blocks.
We never got out of the city.
Yeah. Only on the field trip.
Yeah, that's right.
And so that was very eye-opening. So yeah, the housing issue came up, gentrification came up as well, and how some of the counties were. Living wage did come up because we talked about the different companies that are located in certain areas, or when a company comes in, what are some of the factors they look at when they're looking at relocating into a certain area. And of course, the education part of it always comes up with that. So yes, all those were good discussions that we had. It wasn't in-depth discussions, but it was enough to kind of talk about and see some of the things that are the same and then some things that are different.
You know, just to break in Canada, I go up there often in Quebec.
Mm-hmm.
Walmart was going to build a facility. And I don't know how this happened, but they got all the way to the end of it.
Mm.
And then they started the hiring process, but they had to go through their city board or their county or whatever, however they have them organized. And they found out that they weren't going to give them benefits or a living wage. Do you know that the city, that Walmart left because that was part of the requirement. They just assumed that they would be giving them benefits and living wage and also affordable housing.
Right.
Nope.
Well,
isn't that something?
Yeah, I mean that's a very bold statement for actual statement for them to make, which is good because
well, don't you think they should have made it at the front?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. When they sat down and started negotiating, okay, these are our requirements. You know, if you want to come and be located here, these are things that are going to be required.
But in Canada, it's an assumption.
Oh, okay.
But they, you know, Walmart didn't know that.
Yeah.
Or whoever was directing.
Well, they found out. I'm pretty sure.
I think it's a good idea.
Yes, I mean, it helps protect your community because if a company is relocating into an area, and if they're not able to offer, you know, livable wages, then you start talking about your medium income, and then other companies are going to be looking at that, whether they want to come, especially retail and restaurants. And if your medium income is not at a certain level, then they're not going to come to your community. So now you have a community that is stuck with lower end type of stores, where it should just be, if I want to go to the lower end, let me go, not be that's my only choice. And it all comes back to, you know, to wages.
Yes, it does.
And
that was a great. I'd love to go to something like that.
Yes, they usually I got somebody recommended me to. That's kind of how it's set up, and I don't know what, but I can give you the information. It's through the Georgia Department of Community Affairs, and they do it every August of the year is when they start the selection process. And then I think our first meeting was in August. We had 4 meetings. So August, September, October, and November. And it's like all day. You're there from 8 to probably about 4 o'clock.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so you have to dedicate some time to being able to participate in the program. So another issue I want to bring up, specifically dealing with Clayton County, is our jet fuel tax money that we were being able to collect through the SPLOST, that we're no longer able to collect due to the Federal Aviation Authority's ruling. So for last year, Governor Deere was there. So 2 years ago, it came up before the legislative body because of the jet fuel tax. So the way it's set up, so everybody know, the Hartsfield-Jackson Airport sits 80% in Clayton County, but the county does not own or operate the airport. It is done by the city of Atlanta. So there are certain taxes that, as the county does collect for the businesses and all of that, but then the jet fuel tax money was additional money that the county had been collecting for about 10 years, and that was for the SPLOST money. So what happened was the FAA said it was a ruling that had been sitting on the books, but it had not been enforced. And we don't know what happened. All of a sudden it was enforced. And it not only affected Clayton County, there were other counties in the state and even nationally that were affected about the loss of jet fuel tax money. So what the ruling says is that any sales tax that's collected from jet fuel sales must be spent at the location on where it's collected. Where because City of Atlanta owns the airport, Clayton County could never spend the money where it was collected because we don't own the airport.
Well, that's not right.
And the City of Atlanta couldn't collect it because it was a county SPLOST tax.
Okay.
So that became a dilemma. And you're talking about $18 million a year for our county that we would no longer be able to collect. And because in December of this year, which is this year, end of this December, the school system portion would not be, with all the taxes have already stopped being collected, but the school system is the first ones that will be affected by it. Even though we reauthorized the SPLOST, it will not be including the jet fuel tax. So about 2 years ago, we sat down and talked with Governor Deal about how this is going to affect Clayton County. One out of 159 counties is very unique because of the situation with the airport. And so we were able to work out a negotiation with Governor Deal where he allowed for us to be able, for the state to be able to give a grant to Clayton County for about 30-something million dollars for to be able to hold the city and the county out until our 2021 SPLOST. And so because because now we're not collecting, but at least made us whole until that time.
Thank God.
And then for the school system, they were able to work out with the Delta Foundation to give money, $18 million for the school system till the end of their SPLOST. But their SPLOST ended this year. Yeah, end of December.
Yeah.
So right now we're still negotiating. In last session, we introduced 2 bills up under the dome to allow for Clayton County to be able to tax the property that's located at the airport. And right now, that particular airport property is slated as public use. And it's our contention that it's not public use, it's a private company, which is the airlines. Right. And that they are earning money off of the usage of that land.
That's
and
right.
That Clayton County should, as if any other jurisdiction is able to, and according to our state constitution, we should be able to collect the taxes off of it. So we've been in negotiation, talking with the city of Atlanta. It has not been going very favorable. We had one meeting January the 9th before session started earlier this year, where we sat down with the mayor and her staff. And at that time, she said they want to be good neighbors. And we said we want to be good neighbors. It's been an issue that's been ongoing for years, and we want a resolution to it. So every year we don't have to come to the Capitol trying to figure out where our money is going to be. Let us focus on some other stuff.
$18 million
is
a lot of money.
A lot of money. And so she said she was going to get with her legal team, and they were going to get back with us. So we didn't hear anything back to maybe mid-February, almost end of February. Well, you know how it works at the Capitol. If you're going to introduce legislation, you got to get it in early.
Absolutely.
And so we didn't wait to hear back from. We went ahead and dropped our legislation because we didn't want to take a chance of waiting to hear for them, and then we don't have anything in the hopper. So it's still in the committee, in the 2 different committees now. And so we did have another meeting. She was not there. The mayor was not there. Mayor Bottoms wasn't there. She had her legal team with the airport there. And what they wanted to present to us was about some land that the city owned in Clayton County, and they want to develop it. And the question I asked them was, how long is that development going to take? I said, because what we're talking about is we need a relief right now, not 3 and 4 years down the road. We can still talk about it, but we want to know about what we're able to do right now. We want you all to come in and be in negotiation with us so we can work together and not work on opposite ends of it. So we didn't hear anything back from the mayor's office. We have not met with anybody. I know our chair of our delegation has been working, trying to get a meeting. The chairman of our county commission, Chairman Turner, has been working, trying to get a meeting. We have not gotten another meeting. And now session is getting ready to start again.
Is it called stalling?
Yeah, I believe it's called stalling. So there was a big bill in the legislature about the takeover. They call it the takeover of the airport. And and so there were many people on both sides of that conversation about that the state should not come in and take over if it's well run, on time and everything. Why is the state interested in it? So one of the conversations we heard from the Senate side, because the bill originated over in the Senate, was that they had concerns about the corruption that was taking place with the money with the contracts that were going on at the airport, not about how it was managed, run, and all of that. So when the bill came over to the House side, the negotiating part was that they were that the state could create an oversight committee to be to look at how those contracts have been delivered and all of that. But then it became a partisan issue between the Democrats and the Republicans. And so for us, it was myself and I think two other members of our legislature who voted in favor of this bill, because part of it was going to create on that particular board a slot for someone representing Clayton County to be on the oversight committee, which was only right because the airport sits in Clayton County.
That's right.
So, of course, we had our Atlanta colleagues upset with us. And what we told them is that we've been trying to sit down and talk with y'all the whole time.
That's right.
To explain to y'all how devastating this was for our county. And if it had been to you all would have wanted us to come in and help intervene for you all. Absolutely. And that we all have to stay there in that region together while we got to have this discourse. When just find a way for us to be able to collect the money. If the Constitution says that any jurisdiction is allowed to collect taxes on property, then let us do what the Constitution says we can do.
That's right.
And then when we want to go and negotiate, wasn't for a large, humongous amount. It was enough to make sure we were whole and that our citizens were not going to have to worry about a decrease in public services, because that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That money that we're not able to get, that means we won't be able to build in the roads. The school's going to be hindered for any new constructions that they want to be able to do, the maintenance on some of the buildings. So it's a lot that, it's going to affect our county. So I want to definitely bring that out and be on the lookout, because there's also a federal bill that Janet Napoleon, yes, from California.
Napoleano.
Yes. So she introduced, because the state of California was affected as well about the jet fuel tax, the FAA ruling. So her particular bill, and she has some co-authors on the bill, it says that the FAA is not to enforce that particular rule and allow for jet fuel tax sales to be collected, sales money to be collected off of those jet fuel taxes. So we're working, on the state level, and then we're also working on the federal level to try to see what kind of remedy can come for Clayton County on that part. Okay. Oh, I was finished, but I could come up with some more stuff.
We were just kind of testing,
okay.
And we wanted to make sure.
Okay, yeah, no,
You could speak for a half an hour more. That was fascinating.
Thank you.
That made me tired.
If you're talking, if you need more information on the airport.
Yes, I guess I can.
Very interesting.
So what else is? My question is, you've got until 2021.
Yes, for the city and counties.
That money is given to you.
We need you two both now to dialogue.
Okay.
So your questions and answers.
Oh, okay.
Kind of going back and forth. And
okay. Okay.
Well, so you're guaranteed money until 2021.
Yeah, for the cities and counties. So that 1% splash that's collected, the county collects it and then distributes it out to the cities and the school system. So because the cities and the counties are directly up under the state as well as state government, that's how we were able to do Governor Deal was able to negotiate to do this the grant. And so, but couldn't do it for the school system because it's a whole separate entity on how it's structured.
That's right.
And so, it was two sets. So the total was $45 million that was set aside. So it was 30-something million for the city and the county combined, and then it was and that was for 3 years. So that was totaled up for 3 years. So it was like 18 million per year. And then for the school system, theirs was 18 million because it just would have been for 2 years until the SPLOST was renewed, right? So now, so it was like 9 million for the school system each year, and then 9 million total for the city and the county. So that's how the 18 million came up as a total. Good. For all three entities.
Well, I think what one of the things that bothers me is that there seems to be in the United States these energies, they're negative energies that want to reconstruct for themselves what their ideas are, but they don't feel bad at all about leaving the very people aside that have been working and really need to have that money as maintenance for them. So when you talk about the ownership of the airport, it's 80%, right?
Right. It's 80% of the land sits in Clayton County. And then the other 20% is in Fulton County. But the maintenance and operation and the ownership of the airport itself is in the hands of the city of Atlanta.
So, you know, it seems like it would be advantageous for everybody to sit down, but they have to be thinking about all the players, not just about themselves.
Right.
And when they said the airport wants to develop some of that land?
Yeah, it was a land that sits in Clayton that's not part of the airport. So some other land that the city of Atlanta owns. A small portion, I think, over in Riverdale, and I forgot where the other land was. And so when the attorneys with the city of Atlanta came to sit down to negotiate, they said, "Oh, you know how the Ponce City market was developed? We would like to do the same thing." And I'm sitting there thinking about how long it took the Ponce City market to get developed, and that was in prime location. You know, that's versus where you're talking about this particular land is, you're really gonna have to sell a developer for coming in to, you know, really have to have some good incentives on the table for them to come in and develop, and then depending on what it is they want to develop, because of the area that you're talking about, we don't have a high medium income, you know, in that area. So there are a lot of factors that play into it.
Gentrified.
Right.
And then, you know, I've been working with the Atlanta Public Schools issue on this excellent schools, and the model of excellent schools puts schools in a portfolio, and if you're lowest performing, they just wipe you out. This is in 6 different cities in the United States. And I said it's a recipe to get rid of the residents, because the lowest performing students are probably from single mothers, low income, poor jobs, because you don't have, you know, they're working 2 or 3 jobs. Right. And those kids need a lot of support.
Yeah, they do.
And because they need that support, they don't want to give it. It's so easy just to wipe them off and then reconstruct. Well, to me, I think it's African American community will be devastated if this continues.
Yeah, if we don't speak up and look at, you know, what we can do to be able to help our own community, and then not only that, we can't just do it ourselves. You have to have those other outside resources to come in and support it. And it's sad, because it seems like it's a generation and generation of things. Why is it that, you know, even if we have the discussion about the money for funding, putting more money in the public schools, my question is always, the more money that you put in those particular areas, what have been the results of it? And if those results are not working, what else can we do with the amount of money that's going in there? And looking at, okay, it's evident that just using what's in the community is not enough, because it's not strong enough. So how do we be able to collaborate with those entities outside of the community that have those resources that we need to bring into the community?
In the community.
To bring it into the community. So I'll give you an example. We talk about career development and children choosing a career. Well, if my parents just worked in fast food, or may have worked in the warehouse, that's the only career I know about. I don't know anything about what a doctor is supposed to do. I don't know anything about a scientist is supposed to do, or anything. So how do we, like I said, using outside of that community, because that's not what's in the community.
Right.
So how do we collaborate with what's on the outside, bringing them in, and kids being able to see, and even taking them out the community to go to field trips to show and say, hey, these are possibilities. The only difference is you want to have the ability to be successful, and us providing the foundation that you need to make sure that you're successful in those careers.
Exactly.
But they don't know about it. So that's one thing that I've seen as a repeated thing in our communities, is that the exposure is not there. And
five generations. There's a report that was done by the Shapiro Foundation for the Atlanta Women's Foundation. In Atlanta, there are there were 5 in 2016, so now there's probably 7 generations of children that were born into poverty and that are poor.
Yes.
With the Atlanta Public Schools, they used to have 149,000 African American kids in that system. Now there's 50. Most of the people in the system are very poor single parents.
Yes.
So if you have a system whereby you knock off the bottom and there's no affordable housing, nor is there living wages, it just is not going to be sustainable.
No, it's not.
So,
and they're going to continue to have to stay on the system because there's no other means for them to be able to survive and support themselves.
Exactly. In Atlanta, where will they go? They'll go to DeKalb. They'll come to Clayton.
Yes.
But Atlanta needs to maintain the beautiful African American community that's there.
Yes.
They need to stay in their place. They need to get the resources they need. Those kids need to be the hope that Atlanta brings to the world. You know,
and it's possible. So many resources in Atlanta. Oh my goodness. I mean, and when you talk about the huge foundations, they don't want to come to Clayton or South Fulton or anywhere else. They want to come where the mega city is, which is Atlanta.
Right.
And so why is it that you have a huge city with all these resources and you still have low performing schools in certain communities that, like you said, are generational? How is it that Thomasville is still having the lowest performing school?
I don't understand it.
There's not, and I grew up in that area. My dad lived in over in right around the corner from the federal prison. So I used to play in that particular community. I went to high school with individuals that lived in that in Thomasville area, and they are now adults, and some of them still have, who are still there, have kids.
That's right.
Who now have kids, and it's like, it's the same thing that's going on when I was a little girl. Why has it not changed?
Why hasn't it
changed?
And
but the performances of jobs have changed. The wages on certain jobs have changed. But why has nothing changed in that particular area?
Who said that $7.25 was the minimum wage in 1980?
Yes.
And it's still
the same.
Wage. So what about companies? You bring them in, give them incentives to come in, but I think we have to be more like the Canadians. You know, we're not going to subsidize your company.
Right. If you're not able to offer those livable wages, that's going to help sustain it.
And it's not a liberal wage. It's a sustainable wage. It's justice.
Yes.
It's justice. And we need that all throughout the South.
Yes.
I think that we could end poverty in the next 5 years if people had get those guys to pay taxes. Well, get the airport to give you the money.
Right, and then have a specific goal. That's the other thing, is having, we have these community meetings, and then you have the community development plan, which is one of the things we learned about in that particular class at Academy for Economic Development, that each community has to create by state law a community development plan, which is to look at the economics, the growth, what businesses they're going to be strategizing on, education. But what I've found, even when Clayton County and even each city has to have a plan as well. But what I've noticed is that when they're having these meetings, you have the community people, but I very rarely have seen where the school system has been able to say, well, you need to be at the table.
Really?
Yes. And not only that, okay, nonprofits, we need y'all to be at the table. And because when you're doing a huge plan like that, right, when you're doing a huge plan, because all of those entities are affected. And even when you talk about the schools, the different schools, and like you talked about the community school concept, is that you have nonprofits that are already servicing those same children that are going to the same school.
That's right.
Why isn't that our school systems cannot open up their doors and allow those nonprofits to be operating inside of the school?
Why?
It's our tax money that are helping support the school system and helping to support them. The teachers, the educators have enough that they need to educate the kids. They shouldn't have to be the counselors. They shouldn't have to be the disciplinarians when it comes to that. And a lot of it's because of those social issues that we have, that the nonprofits have already said, I'm a nonprofit. I agree that I want to help children in this particular area. I want to help families in this area. The only difference between that is the resources and money that they need. That on the other ends of our county, they get the money a whole lot more than our other organizations in our community. So why not redirect how they're funded and tie it into them having a collaboration with our local school districts?
I totally agree.
And then that way you getting them from birth all the way till they graduate from high school. And the teachers are then able to have better control in their classroom because that's what's missing.
And neighbors
they don't
know who the kids are.
Yes, they will.
I don't know about you, but we couldn't go 2 blocks and do something wrong.
Oh,
my
yeah,
mother
you got
didn't
to call.
know before you bet. We don't know these children.
No. And a lot of it, like I said, is just some parents just need some help, but they don't know who to ask. And then if they go to the school is so overwhelmed that, why should the school have to keep a resource guide where they have to flip through and try to figure out where the shelter is, who they need to call for this. I need to help a parents at one school. The counselor is helping parents write resumes. I'm like, why are you helping them represent? I don't know.
In high school.
Right. I don't know. I don't know who else to ask about it. And I want to help them get a job. So that's where the nonprofits come in at. I said, you have businesses that do that. I said, you just got to know how to form a partnership with them. So I started assisting that particular school with, okay, I heard this organization. Okay, y'all contact them. Even with the technical college, I now have been working with them to get into the schools to make announcement to the parents about the programs you have. Because what I've noticed is that the state has all of these programs, but nobody knows about them or know how to access them.
You got it.
And so because you don't have it, yes, it is a lot of work.
Exhausting.
It's a lot of work.
I mean, for a teacher to have to do you're just overwhelmed with what the needs are. And if everybody had transportation.
Oh, yes.
You could walk to school.
Yes.
Well, wouldn't that be nice? And
or
sidewalks.
Or either as a community being able, because we used to do that, we walked together as a community to the school.
Yes.
So, being able to, some things you might say, well, oh, that was then, but some of those same things are what helps sustain us to be who we are and being able to be so caring. And these children have so much issues that they're facing that they're being caring and being considerate is almost non-existent. You look at all the crimes, on people. It's like what they senseless. It's like you didn't think about how that was going to affect something. You just did it.
And because they don't have any relationships.
Right. That's right.
They don't have. They're not in a community long enough to develop strong relationships. And parents, even that live in these apartments, they don't know who's next door. Kids do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they don't. So that sense of community,
I was just,
bring it back.
My sister and I went to this store, Mark's in Cleveland, and I was there, and this woman came up to me and said, "Diane Doughtery." She was the crossing guard. She spent 50 years as the crossing guard in the same street, getting kids across State Street.
Wow.
50 years. She knew exactly who I was.
I wonder why.
Yeah, but my hair was all white. So anyway, well, this was wonderful. Thank you so much. I always enjoy you.
Thank you. Same likewise.
We have I want to send you a new book that came out. I got the PDF file.
Okay.
It's from 2016, and it's on charters. But as I was reading it, I realized I don't have a problem with charters. I have a problem with charters that are hijacking the public school system, because I don't believe in privatization of the whole, the Betsy DeVos.
Well, I think
Model.
If you take what you talked about the community schools, it's the exact same thing that charters are created to be able to do. It's those things that our traditional schools say, I don't have time to do it, I can't do it.
That's right.
Then you do this model, and then what is supposed to happen is once the charter school develop that non-traditional type of education, then they're supposed to go back to the traditional school and say, hey, this worked with a small segment of kids. That's exactly how
it was set up.
Right, that's how it was set up.
I believe in that.
Yes.
But I think it's been hijacked by private companies I was doing some study about Michigan, Ohio, Louisiana, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
They put $1 billion each state, just for 1 year, into those charters. And in this one district, April 24th, I'll never forget it. They notified this company notified the district that they couldn't make a profit. They took all the computers,
Oh, wow.
all of the electronics, all the technology. All they left was the desks.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah, that
then
is
you have
devastating.
this entire, it's a district in Muskegon County. Who are the kids that are affected?
The ones that live there.
Black.
Mm-hmm.
All black. And there was no way to go back and do anything. They didn't think legislatively.
Yeah, to make a requirement that, okay, because when you look at it, the amount of money that the state puts in there, that's our tax dollars.
$1 billion.
Yes.
In 1 year.
And so being able to allow that private company to be able to come and take that should not have been allowed, because that's our taxpayer money.
That's right.
And so I do agree with you when it comes down to the privatization of that. And you have some charter schools that are ran by nonprofits that are community people. And the issue, the biggest thing I've noticed here in Georgia when it comes to that is the support that's needed in order to maintain that charter school.
You got it.
And when you when it's not there, they struggle, and they shouldn't have to go through the process as if they were opening up a private school. That's the process they're taking through. We had a school that was locally authorized in Clayton County, 7 Pillars, where the school system really didn't want to authorize. They just did it, in my opinion, to keep my mouth closed, because I was telling them that y'all hadn't authorized in 10 years, and that's what I say every time I get to the Capitol. And so so last year they approved it, and the reason I know that they didn't do it because they thought it was the right thing to do is that they have incrementally tried to sabotage the school alone. Now, with them locally authorizing it, the school is supposed to be a part of them. They have told the other schools, the other schools in Clayton County, that 7 Pillars is not a part of them, that they weren't going to open. So when parents went to get their transfer papers from the surrounding middle school, because it's for 6th grade, they started with 6th grade, they were told, oh, we never heard of that school. We heard that school not going to open. So you as a parent, you don't know, you going to a school
Isn't
that
it
you
awful?
trusted. It was awful.
And they did that all over Louisiana,
Yeah.
in the 5th Ward.
And I
Fourth
went
ward.
to the school system, to one day school board meetings, and I said it. Superintendent said, no, that's not true. I said, I saw it and I heard it from the parents, so you can't tell me something that's not true. And I said, and then the way that you all, when you get your drawdown from the state, you want to treat the school differently than what the state treats you. The state says, okay, when they sign the contract, they said we're going to have this amount of kids. So the state budgets for that amount of kids. The same thing as they do for a traditional school. And if, say for instance, traditional school comes in when they actually do the final count, the first count in October. Say if that number is lower than what they had originally budgeted for, they don't come back and tell the traditional school, you got to give us back that money. So what they were trying to do with the charter school was say, oh, you didn't have that amount of kids, you got to give the money back. And what I explained to them is that in the beginning, that schools signed contracts with those teachers.
That's right.
And they know that up to October, they know that this is what the funding was going to be. So you sabotage, and then they didn't let the electrical
it's the same thing
company.
as the airport.
Right, the same thing. And so they didn't let the.
You depend on that money. It has to show up.
Yeah, it has to show it. And so when you're not able to do that, now you've thrown off the thinking and the planning that they spent a whole year to do, just because you want to be controlling the money that's not even your money to control. So I've been going back and forth with them. They missed out on getting their discount for the E-rate, for the electricity, the gas, and the library. It's a certain rate that they give to schools that that don't go to the normal person, but they discount it heavily. So they lost us. So I told them, I said, that's the taxpayer money, because the more money that school has to pay out, that's our taxpayer money. That's not no private money.
So what did they do? They just held it up?
Yeah, they held it up. And then as the more noise I began to make,
good for you.
Then would do a little bit, then they'll come back and do something else. I mean, I've
mean, you
been
shouldn't have
constantly
to go
fighting.
through
No, I told myself, I'm tired. I said, but I'm going to keep fighting. I said, you wait till I get to the Capitol. I said, I'm telling on everybody. I said, I got my whole long list. I said, when the speaker said, we're going to now have morning orders, I said, y'all best. If whenever I don't get finished with them 2 minutes, the next day I will come back and say, I'm continuing, and I will do it for 40 days till I see something different in how these schools are being treated. I said, because they are kids in our community, and if their parents chose that, you don't punish what the decision of the parents are. You help support it. And there was a reason why those parents said, I believe I want my child to go here. And as a school system, you should be asking, parents, why did you want your child to go here? What is that we're not doing or we can do better? You know, I think that we need to even look at the accountability of our traditional schools as far as how you treating the parents that you have that are zoned for your school that have to go there.
Some of these, some of the principals are so cruel.
Yes, they are.
They're very cruel.
Mm-hmm.
Force and fear.
Yes.
I mean, and it's almost like they, you know,
They know
they're
that
in a
they-
prison.
yeah.
The kids are in a prison. They have
And they
to,
know
like,
that they're going to have to go there.
it's like Catholic school.
Yeah, I never been to Catholic school, so I can't say anything about that.
Well, no, not where I've been, but some of the stories I've heard are just terrible.
Yeah.
But I mean, we had great Catholic school. They used to take us on First Fridays through the city to see movies.
Really? Wow.
The older kids, 7th and 8th grade. And at the end of the year, you skip school days to go roller skating
Oh, wow.
in the roller skating rink. And
Mm-hmm.
older kids got to go dancing. They had
Oh,
dancing
really?
classes for us to build us socially and emotionally.
Right.
Well, it's not like that anymore.
No, but you have to have you have to have those outlets for the kids.
What are they doing in there?
Oh no, are we finished?
Yeah, we waiting on y'all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did you
Y'all
eat all
still
the?
talking, so we just let y'all.
Did
so
you eat all the chips?
No, I didn't eat all the popcorn. No.
Well, I
So
want to.
close it out. Close out. Both
Okay.
of you say your name and your shows and close out.
Okay.
Yeah, we were just waiting on you all to get there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we having a good
I know,
conversation.
that's why we let y'all talk. Okay. Well, we're just a test case anyway.
Okay.
We're going to publish it, though. We're gonna
Oh,
put it out
okay.
there.
Okay. So I have enjoyed conversating with Reverend Doughtery. Very informative, very in-depth conversation.
Yes.
And we, like we said, we have more things we agreed on than we disagree. But like I said, even
Absolutely.
those things that we disagree, it's always about the road on how to get there. But we know we want to get there to the end. So I'm State Representative Valencia Stovall, House District 74, with Issues and Answers, hosted by myself. And I invite you to visit my website at gostovall.com. You can follow me on social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I think that's it. Yeah, Instagram, Twitter. I had to think about all three of them. At Valencia Stovall.
All right, and my name is Reverend Diane Doughtery, and the program that I have is called Take a Stand. I bring in people who are resisting unhealthy activities that do damage to our broader society, and most particularly to women. So you can, again, listen to this program. It's called Take a Stand, and I'm going to look forward to having a whole lineup of great people that are standing up to resist anything that will injure our society or our democracy. So thank you all. It was great to be with you, Valencia, once again.
Same here. Good night.
Good night.